Hello, hello, lovely ladies. Let me ask you a question. If somebody showed you an iceberg and asked you how much of it was visible above the water, what would you say? Most people know the answer. Only about 20% of an iceberg can be seen above the surface. The remaining 80% is hidden underneath the water. Now imagine standing on a ship and looking at the iceberg from a distance. If you only focused on the visible 20%, you would have a completely distorted picture of what you're actually dealing with ahead of you. You would think the iceberg is much smaller than it really is. You would think you understand it. You would think you know what you're looking at and how to deal with. But you would be wrong, dead wrong, because the largest and most important part is hidden from view. And if you don't know anything about the other 80%, you would hit the iceberg and your ship would sink. Over the years, I have seen it time and time again that weight struggles work exactly the same way. You see, when most people try to lose weight, they focus almost exclusively on the visible 20%, the part that everybody can see. Food, calories, exercise, meal plans, willpower, discipline, portion size, the scale, the latest diet, the newest injection, the newest pill. And if everything fails, then gastric surgery. And lots of new promises. Everything revolves around the visible part of the iceberg. And because that's the part we can see, it feels so logical, so clear, so understandable. It feels obvious. It feels like that's where the solution must be. But what if it isn't? What if the visible 20% is not where the real problem lives and therefore not where the solution is? What if the visible 20% is simply where the symptoms show up? You can see it, it becomes visible. You know, oh, okay, there is a problem. Because here's what I have observed after working with thousands of women for many years. Two women can eat the same food, follow the same plan, exercise the same amount, and achieve completely different results. Now, why would that happen? If weight loss were only about the visible 20%, those two women should have similar outcomes, but they mostly don't. And that's what eventually led me to ask a different question. What is happening underneath the surface? What is happening in the invisible 80%? And by working with women's subconscious for 43 years by now, I know that the 80% beneath the surface within the subconscious are far, far more interesting and far, far more important and far, far more worth starting. So what would I discover if I dove around the 80% invisible part of the iceberg to find out what's there and how big it really is? That's what I've been doing for the last 43 years because that's where things become really, really interesting and where the solutions lie. Below the waterline, we often find stress, exhaustion, emotional pain, fear, self doubt, pressure, people pleasing, lack of boundaries, chronic overwhelm, old beliefs, identity, habits, emotional eating, the need for comfort, the need for safety, trauma, the need for protection. By the way, most of us have trauma, whether we are aware of or not. And suddenly the picture becomes much larger and much, much more realistic. Now, I want you to imagine something. Imagine that every time your car makes a strange noise, you simply turn up the radio. The noise disappears, at least temporarily. But has the problem been solved? No, unfortunately not. The symptom has been covered up. It's like putting on makeup on an ugly face. Cause remains. And that's what many weight loss approaches do. They focus on the visible symptom while the invisible causes remain completely untouched. Now, please don't misunderstand me. Food matters, movement matters, sleep matters a lot, nutrition matters a lot. The visible 20% is not irrelevant for your health, for your survival. It's about physical survival. But when it comes to weight loss, it's insanely incomplete. That's a very important distinction because for decades, women have been taught that if they simply controlled the visible 20% better, everything would work out. If only you were stricter, if only you had more discipline, only you ate less, if only you exercised more, if only you controlled yourself. And yet, millions of intelligent women have followed that advice and still found themselves struggling. Now, does that mean that all those women are failures? It can't be. It's not possible that millions and millions of women all around the planet are wrong, that they are failures. It's not possible. Or does it mean they were trying to solve an 80% problem with 20% with a 20% solution? Can you see how different those explanations feel? One blames the woman, the other questions the model, the method. And personally, I think the society has been blaming women for far too long and have been totally wrong far, far too long. Because when I sit down with women and listen to their stories, I rarely find a lack of effort. I hardly ever find a lack of motivation. And I can't remember that I ever found a lack of discipline and willpower. As a matter of fact, every woman who gets on the path of discovering the 80% of the iceberg that are beneath the surface have a lot of motivation, discipline, and willpower. And the good thing is they don't need it anymore, at least not nearly as much as they need for the dieting approach. And certainly they don't lack effort. I find women who have tried everything, who are disappointed, frustrated, women who have spent years fighting, women who have sacrificed, women who have followed the rules, women who desperately wanted change. What woman doesn't want to be slim and beautiful? The problem was never a lack of desire. And let's be honest, a woman who goes from diet to diet, from exercise program to exercise program, who buys apps, books, membership programs, magazines, weight loss magazines, who watches The Biggest Loser and My 600-Pound Life can hardly be blamed for not having enough discipline and willpower. Such excuses can only come from slim people who have no, sorry, I almost said a bad word, who have no idea of what women on a weight loss journey are going through. The problem was that nobody showed them the entire iceberg. Nobody explained that there might be something much larger beneath the surface. Now, let's imagine a woman who feels overwhelmed every day. She takes care of everybody else. She has a job or a business. She never rests. She rarely says no. She carries enormous emotional pressure. And every evening she finds herself reaching for comfort food. A traditional weight loss approach sees only the food. But what happens if we look beneath the surface? Suddenly we discover exhaustion, stress, loneliness, emotional depletion. And now the behavior starts making sense. The food was never the whole story. The food was simply the visible tip of the iceberg. And that's what makes this so very, very important. Because when women finally understand this, something important shifts. For the first time, they stop asking what's wrong with me and they begin asking, what am I not seeing yet? That is a much more empowering and smarter question because hidden problems can only be solved when we begin to question them and to make them visible. And that's why awareness is so important because awareness changes where you look. Once you understand that 80% of the iceberg is hidden, you stop obsessing over the visible 20%. You become curious about what lies underneath. And that's where real transformation can begin. And that's when real transformation can begin. Not with another diet. Which diets? Forget about diets. Not with another set of rules. Forget about food rules and listen to your body. Your body is trying to tell you exactly what it needs. Not with another battle against yourself. Begin to appreciate your body. Begin with a deeper understanding of what is really happening beneath the surface. So today I want you to leave with a simple question. If you've spent years trying to change the visible 20%, what might be waiting for you in the hidden 80%? That might be very interesting to find out, because perhaps the reason you've been stuck isn't that you've been trying too little. Perhaps you've been looking in the wrong places, and perhaps that's very, very good news. Because once you start exploring beneath the surface, a completely different journey becomes possible. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love to invite you to our free Women Beyond Weight community, where women are discovering that lasting weight freedom begins not by fighting the visible 20% harder, but by understanding the hidden 80% more deeply. The link is below, and I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Take care. Bye for now. Happy slimming.